Hello and welcome to the Functionally Enlightened Podcast with Dr. Sharon Surita. We interview well-respected medical and functional practitioners, as well as patients who have overcome disabling chronic conditions, such as dysautonomia, and reclaimed their health. These enlightened guests provide helpful tips on managing chronic pain and illnesses, using a combination of traditional and whole-body healing modalities. If you're interested in natural healing and quality of life improvement, you're in the right place. Thank you for listening to today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Functionally Enlightened Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. She's an internationally recognized leader in integrative and Ayurvedic medicine, Dr. Shivani Gupta. She's known for bridging ancient healing wisdom with modern clinical science. With over 20 years of advanced study in Ayurveda in both the US and India, Dr. Shivani's groundbreaking research in turmeric helped redefine how this ancient botanical is understood and how it's used in evidence-based care today. She's a #1 Amazon bestselling author, a highly sought-after speaker at major medical and integrative health conferences, and the author of an upcoming Hay House book releasing, is it this month, Dr. Shivani?
Yes, February 3rd.
Awesome. So her work really is focusing on inflammation, gut health, autoimmune recovery, circadian medicine, and restoring balance through personalized, nature-aligned healing strategies. So, Dr. Shivani, we are really excited to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. What first drew you into Ayurveda, and how did your personal or clinical experience really shape the way you practice today?
You know, growing up, I lived in two worlds. When I was in the United States, as a kid, I'd get sick, we'd go to the pediatrician, and no matter what cold you had, you got a script for antibiotics. And growing up, when I'd go to India every summer, I'd live in my grandparents' homes, and whenever I got sick, they would pull out the spices, and they'd give me a spice remedy or a tea, and they'd fix me that way. And I always thought, these are two very different approaches to health, and who's right? And so growing up, kept doing that year after year. By the time I got to college, I finally sat down and thought, why am I always the sick one? Why do I catch every cold on earth? How have I taken 100 rounds of antibiotics and now we only go for the strong ones? What does this mean? And it was a moment in India where I was disastrously sick. They thought we should hospitalize this girl. And the doctor looked at me and he's like, okay, well, here's your prescription. And the medicine list he gave me was 13 medications. And some voice inside of me just screamed and said, no, we're not doing it. And my parents looked at me like, where did you start getting opinions about what we're doing here? That doctor says, and you listen to the doctor. And so it was in that moment when we left, I looked at my parents and I said, you know, we're in this land of yoga and Ayurveda. And from everything I'm seeing, people here are really robust and healthy and strong. Can we go explore this? And so I went on this big journey. We went to every Ayurvedic detox center in every corner of India. And I got to study under the gurus and I healed myself. And I thought, this is it. This is what I've been looking for the whole time. You can have incredible gut health. You can live on this rhythm. You can use this ancient wisdom and really build an immune system of steel and vibrancy and then never have to deal with sickness again. And so that's what led me to fall in love with Ayurveda. And then I took that and studied it further, did my master's, did my PhD, because I wanted to write books and keep teaching the world. This is a system that so many of us can use.
So over that time period of 20 years or so of bridging that ancient medicine and the modern science, where did you see the biggest disconnect in how the illnesses were treated and how the body naturally heals?
You know, I see a lot of disconnects, a lot of dysregulation, a lot of dissonance, honestly. And I think when we look at ourselves as a society, there's the Western cultures, there's the Eastern cultures, and I'm always trying to bridge them because I'm from both. I'm right in the middle of both. And I think there's benefits to both sides as well. So in our modern Western allopathic medicine systems, they're wonderful at surgery, at serious issues, at treating us. But when we show up at the door, and I've done this, I would show up to the primary care's office and I'd be like, okay, I have a list and I want to know answers to all my questions. And I remember when I did that after having kids, the doctor looked at me, he's like, you don't have arthritis. No, there's nothing wrong with your hand. Your heart is fine. Your thyroid's fine. You're just fine. Because that appointment had to be 5 minutes long. And I remember leaving that appointment thinking, you are not my person. That was not the answers I needed. I actually needed so much more help. And then I remembered back growing up, my parents would take me sometimes to a naturopathic doctor when we couldn't unravel what the issue is, or a homeopathic doctor. And so I definitely see this big role for all of us to take a step back and say, okay, maybe the healthcare system I'm approaching for answers isn't the one that's going to give me the answers I need in this moment. And that's where I think we have a profound toolkit. We have functional medicine. You're an FDN. I think FDN is incredible at testing us, understanding what's really going on underneath the hood, and then helping us address those issues. Because oftentimes, vitamins, minerals, nutrients, a lot of things can be off kilter, or we may not even understand the underlying root causes that are really running the show and causing trouble. I had an issue last year where it was like, oh, okay, that was the problem. Then we've got naturopathic, homeopathic, Ayurvedic. And so usually people find Ayurveda as their last door. When they are on a health journey and they've tried everything, acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, the last thing you hear about is Ayurveda. And so my role on planet Earth is just to bring Ayurveda much more to the forefront and say, Ayurveda teaches us a lifestyle. It's a rhythm. It's you living according to your circadian rhythm, according to your elemental design, your constitution and body type. And it can be simple, tiny, micro habits and lifestyle rituals that are free. So why not bring them into our lives and road test them and see how do we feel if we practice it that way, as opposed to just living against nature is how we call it in Ayurveda. We say when we're living against nature, it's almost like you're flowing uphill against the streams of life. And if we want to live in rhythm with nature and stay in a healed, healthy, robust state, we can flow downhill with the rivers of nature. And it's just that much easier to be healthy then.
Right, going with the flow against instead of against it. And Dr. Shivani, I love that you brought up that we come prepared to go to our practitioners, whether it be primary care or specialty. I myself carried an actual 3-ring binder. I had it divided by specialty so that I could make the most of the time. But I learned quickly that they wouldn't even take the time to flip through the tab or even look at the set of labs that I was presenting. So I do like that you brought that up. And for our listeners, you know, those that are battling chronic illness, some of them like autoimmune conditions or what we call Asia syndrome, they know they've run the gambit with all of those specialist visits. And so when you bring up the Ayurvedic, I guess, perspective, that was one thing that I did approach, like you said, later on in my own healing journey. I didn't quite understand what all it entailed, what all it provided. So for our listeners who are not very familiar, can you give us a little bit more detail about that Ayurvedic perspective?
Sure. So Ayurveda is this 5,000-year-old science of health, healing, and medicine from India that's over 5,000 years old. And it is hard to understand because it's so vast. Like truly the goal of Ayurveda is to bring body, mind, and spirit in alignment. And I have those ancient texts and sometimes I open them and they're very detailed. They're like, for this issue, you do an enema. For this issue, you do this thing. So they have all the areas of subspecialty and surgical subspecialties talked about in this ancient text that's 5,000 years old. So what I did is when I studied it, I realized, in the West, we don't have much time. We also don't have much patience to put like 100 hours a day into our health. But what we do have is the ability to build a rhythm, to build a lifestyle habit. So I took what I call my 6 pillars out of Ayurveda that I know after working with thousands of clients, if we do these steps, we're going to win at inflammation. We're going to win at our health. You mentioned autoimmune, which is so prevalent in women. I myself have been a leaky gut patient for decades and had to do that work to win at that. And that's always an ongoing journey. And then I have so many clients who come who are struggling with autoimmune conditions. And so in Ayurveda, our goal is to show you have an elemental design. It's what Ayurveda called the Doshas. And I renamed it elemental design to teach the world we're made up of elements and we can design our whole life around these elements. So everyone can take my quiz at my website, drshivani.com, and you find out right then, like which one you are. And it shows you that we're either more air, fire, or water. And we can go into that and what that means. Then there's the circadian clock. Ayurveda came up with the circadian clock and said, we are all meant to be in alignment with nature. And the more we do so, the healthier we are. Then Ayurveda taught us we have this gut digestive fire. And that fire is the center of all health. Like if you just build and maintain that fire, you've got it. For metabolism, brain health, mood, gut health, immune, everything is tied to that digestive fire. Then we teach about self-care rituals, because a great way to build rhythm is to physically do something that's detoxing or healthy or supportive. So we talk about things like tongue scraping, oil pulling, to build a rhythm into your day that's really healthy. Those are our healthy habits. And then we talk about diet, because of course what you eat is what you are. And eating a healthy, nutritious, robust diet can be very supportive. But Ayurveda teaches us almost more about what you eat and when you eat, about how you eat and when you eat, more so than what you eat. So it's really a moderate plan and allows for all of us to have our own different diets. We're not here to say, oh, you have to be vegan or you have to be carnivore. Right. It's actually so much more about nutrient density, a circadian diet, what is good for your individual body. And then we move into what I call the herbology piece, or what I call a mindful medicine chest. So Ayurveda loves its herbs, and we use those. They're kind of our precision medicine in a sense. We use coriander, we're going to use cumin, we're going to use ashwagandha. And so we have quite a treasure chest of herbs and spices. I happen to fall in love with turmeric because I thought turmeric is so multidimensional and powerful in its approach. So I ended up doing my PhD on it, but I actually love all the Ayurvedic herbs because they work so beautifully in tea form, in supplement form, in food form to give us the support our body needs. I consider super spices superfoods. So we talk about superfoods a lot, but we forgot the herb and spice kingdom that can give us all the same benefits as superfoods.
Right. And when we talk about foods, and as FDN, we work with metabolic typing. We also look at food sensitivities. So
Yes.
we want to work with people so that it's not, first off, too restrictive of a diet, which sometimes they come in already on a very limited diet. And so we have forgotten about the use of spices. I myself, when I was in the worst of the mast cell activation flares, cut out everything, including garlic, and I was limited to salt. But I wasn't aware of all of the healing properties that the herbs could have provided. And at a staged approach or at a proper approach, I guess with what you're saying is dependent on which type I would have been. So let's talk a little bit about the different types of doshas.
Sure. So the three doshas, or what I call elemental designs, are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And it's based on the 5 elements. So the 5 elements are air, ether, fire, water, and earth. And when you take these 5 elements and subdivide them, the first constitution, Vata, or what we pronounce in the West, Vata, a Vata person is someone who's air and ether. So this is someone who's lighter. You can imagine the properties of air. It can be a beautiful breeze going through the forest. It could be a ceiling fan, something that moves and never, ever, ever stops. Or it could be a tornado. Could be really violent in its movements and actions. And so Vata really governs all movements in the body, breathing, our heartbeats, every movement. And the properties of air can be very drying or cooling. And so a Vata person physically tends to be taller or shorter than anyone in their demographic, tends to be petite or that kind of lanky body type, smaller boned, oval face, smaller eyes, tends to have dry, brittle hair, tends to have drier skin, tends to run very cold, always feeling cold no matter what. This is someone who, more personality and emotions-wise, tends to always be in motion. This is your person who can't sit still. They want a job where they're moving all the time. They have to be standing and moving. This is your marathon runner, your endurance runner. This is someone who is always like a go-getter, always in motion, always wants to do things, creative because they're lighter beings. Some of their imbalances can be anxiety, insomnia, constipation, dryness of the colon. And they can tend to have this like anxious energy, overwhelmed energy. Sometimes they get accused of being flakes because they don't finish what they start. And this is your person who can go through the whole day without eating. They had their coffee, they had like a juice, they had another coffee, and then by dinner, they're like, I'm out of steam. I don't know what happened. And it's because they were so busy, they forgot to eat, which is unique. So if that's you, that's a very Vata type of state of being. And then we have Pitta people. Pitta people are more medium-bodied. They're right in the middle, tend to have reddish skin, reddish hair, tend towards early graying in the hair. This is someone who personality-wise is really fiery. So if you know someone in your life who's really passionate and driven and organized, they can't even help themselves because they're so passionate about everything, that's a very Pitta, fiery personality. Their Agni or digestive fire is so strong, they are voracious. They get hangry. They have to eat at least 3 meals a day, probably 4. And they have that big, big appetite out of all the constitutions. This is someone who, when out of balance, is kind of like a volcano. Imagine fire type. So they erupt, they explode, they are frustrated, they are angry, they are bitter, and they take it out on the people closest to them. And so I teach my Pitta crew, cool, calm, collected. Treat yourself like a nuclear reactor, manage that food and hydration well. Like, be aware of it and build those systems for yourself. And Pittas tend to run inflamed. And so it's important to talk about eat less hot, oily, spicy fried foods. Let's eat more nutrient-dense foods and foods that are cooling from the inside. Then you have Kapha or Kapha. Kapha people are bigger boned, bigger bodied, sturdier. This is Mother Earth energy, earth with water. And so this is someone who's very one thing at a time. They're slower in their speaking and in their movements. They're like very deliberate in how they do things. Deeply loyal to the people around them. This is that person who takes care of everyone else in their life before themselves. In a man, it feels like mountain energy, like very grounded. You're not going to move them easily. In a woman, it can be this really caretaker energy, maybe grandma energy who takes care of and feeds everybody. They tend to have oilier skin, oilier hair, maybe round curly hair, round face, round eyes. This is the people who are the sweetest, most loyal. In their physical health, they tend to have a sluggish metabolism or tendency towards depression, feeling a little bit low. We need to support them in moving their energy body, moving their metabolism, moving everything along. And then one thing we teach for Kapha is, I know the trends are very cold, icy smoothie and cold salads, but for Kapha, we need to actually eat small, cooked, warm meals. And we need to do more to move the metabolism. And then Kapha of all has the best sleep. They have like the deep slumber out of all of us. And so sleep is never the issue. It's more how to support them and to get up and get moving. And the Kapha crew, once they sit down at the end of their day, they are not getting up again. And so I really teach Kapha to honor the power and the beauty of that energy.
I love the way you broke all of that down as you were explaining the characteristics and traits. I'm thinking of different people in my life. And even, I feel like in some cases I embody characteristics of each of those. Is that one thing that you've noticed too, that there's certain people that would need guidance in all forms?
Yes. So we all have a primary and a secondary. So for example, I'm a Pitta person, majority, but I have a pretty Vata mind. My mind just wants to go into 200 things at once all the time, and I have to keep reining in my mind and bringing it to center. And that's pretty common actually nowadays, to feel like we have a very Vata mind that's all over and always in motion. That's just a construct of modern day life. But Ayurveda also says that there's some crew called 3-doshic. It's not as common, but some people really do carry like a good amount of all 3. And so then you manage them differently based on their strengths, their weaknesses, their imbalances, and where they need help.
Mm-hmm. And as always, bio-individual approach. There's not a cookie cutter way.
Exactly.
So understanding that. I do want to go back to a couple of things that you were just discussing. One of them, just again, with the idea that many of our listeners, they're living with chronic pain that hasn't responded to medications, any pharmaceutical, any specialist guidance. And so how does the Ayurvedic approach, how does it approach pain management differently and symptom suppression or management?
Great question. So I have been in pain many times in my life. I had plantar fasciitis that keeps wanting to come back. I've had knee pain, a lot of different issues. Now it's new: sciatica, back pain, lower pain, sciatica, IT band pain. And historically, whenever I ran to the orthopedic surgeons, they'd say, "You're fine. I don't need an MRI. I know what's wrong with you. Go to PT." And you'd go to PT, go through that whole exercise. Sometimes you'd get better, sometimes not. So I have been on pain journeys many times. Then I had to go through different chiropractors, found the right one. When we talk about Ayurveda, Ayurveda's goal is to show us how to use the toolkit it has to get the body out of pain, out of inflammation, and then build in a lifestyle that's so anti-inflammatory and puts us back into our rhythm so that we can stay healthier. So for example, as a Pitta, I'm going to tend to run inflamed. I'm going to tend to want to eat everything on earth, and that can definitely put me into a state of inflammation. One point also is in Ayurveda, we teach that sweet foods, a lot of times when we're eating them for that comfort or whatever feeling we're looking for, sweet foods have a cooling effect on the inside, which calms down anxiety. And as a society right now, many people are suffering from stress, overwhelm, anxiety, all these things. And that could be why we're reaching for sugar more. And we know sugar is inflammatory and it's going to exacerbate the issue. So I wanted to bring that point in. But when I went to the surgeon a long time ago, I said, every morning I wake up, I feel like I'm walking on glass. And it's so debilitating. I can't walk outside. Everything is hurting. And he said, well, all you have to do, I went to PT, they said, you can just take Advil 24/7 for 10 days. And I was like, okay. Back then, I had not quite started my Ayurvedic studies the way I did them formally here. And I still had that habit of go to the doctor, ask for a solution, do what they say, which I've completely changed that trajectory in my life. But I went, that's what they said, I did it. And 10 days later, I went back and I said, okay, thank you. My feet do feel better, but now I have stomach aches every time I eat. What is that? Like, what do I do about that? They're like, oh, that's common. That happens. That's just a side effect. You'll be fine. And that's when I got enraged because I had already worked really hard for robust and beautiful gut health. I consider that a big part of my life job. And for someone to so easily damage it without explaining that that could be a side effect, to me was beyond ridiculous. And it was the reason I later built an Ayurvedic turmeric company because I thought, okay, everyone at some point is going to hurt something. We're going to have pain. This is life. Like we're going to either fall, hurt ourselves in the gym trying to be good, or life's circumstances can lead to pain. You never know. In my case, I have a new tear in my lower back spine area I discovered leading to sciatica. That's a new lifelong pain I'm going to have based on how I manage it. And so Ayurveda says, look into our powerful herbs that we own that are all anti-inflammatory. Turmeric is a very powerful anti-inflammatory. And we have over 17,000 scientific studies that show its impact for pain and inflammation. We know ginger is a powerhouse herb, boswellia. I mean, the list goes on and on out of Ayurveda. Now, Ayurveda also says we're not meant to take herbs forever. Like an herb is still a tool that you're putting on board into the system. And so you're not meant to use it forever. But from what I've seen over the last decade, I built my entire company to go into orthopedics and chiropractic so that people can get out of pain in a natural way. And people are taking it every day and they call me and they're like, my back pain's gone, my hip pain's gone. I took this post-op and I was able to not take other more serious stuff for pain. Thank you, because I didn't want to take it. I have an addictive personality. I just wanted to avoid that. And so that to me is a big revolutionary piece of work, is showing Western medicine that an Ayurvedic solution can be inside of their office. They can offer it regularly, and then we can get people out of pain. So I am a turmeric girl, so I would always start with turmeric first. I would then look at where can I incorporate anti-inflammatory herbs and spices into my life. Maybe it's ginger lemon tea every morning. Maybe it's using more of those super spices in my food in life. And then thirdly, I would look at my lifestyle. Are we doing all the things that are truly systemically anti-inflammatory? What are we doing for our gut health? What are we doing for our immune system? Like, let's reduce that systemic, chronic, low-grade, persistent inflammation that all of us are suffering from. I mean, I really do think of it as this forest fire. We're all walking around with these forest fires, and we have extinguishers ready, but we're not using them. And so how can we bring in diet, exercise, movement, lifestyle change, and sleep to really approach this? I teach so much about circadian clock and sleep, because if we can align the circadian clock and sleep well, we will clear inflammation. Like nighttime is when we clear it. But so many people who I meet have so much pain, or they're going through perimenopause, menopause, sleep is disturbed, and here we're in these like chronic circles and then staying in pain. So I'm glad you asked about pain. That's like a very personal topic to me on how do we get out of pain without creating side effects that harm us forever.
Yeah, and like you said, your PhD really focused in on turmeric and what the science actually says about the role of inflammation and pain. And in your opinion, in your experience with the patients or clients you manage, how come so many people do get results from it? And are there a subset that you see need a little bit additional support?
Sure. So it's interesting. When I created my two formulas, turmeric gold and inflammation relief, a decade ago, I created them and I was so confident. I was like, all of orthopedics in the whole United States is going to recommend this every day to their patients. I'm such an optimist. I just assume like everything in the world moves according to what I decide. And it was humbling because a good amount of orthopedics, whether they're more DO orthopedics as opposed to MD, or just more open-minded doctors, sometimes it was younger doctors, it just depends. They were like, absolutely, send me the science, I'll review the science. Oh, I see the power of turmeric for anti-inflammatory support. It affects TNF alpha and NF kappa B. These are master switches of inflammation. You can see the amount of inflammatory pathways that turmeric affects. They're like, this is clear. When we're giving NSAIDs, we know it impacts COX-2, COX-1, COX-2, but mainly COX-2. That's one pathway. And here you look at the science of turmeric, it affects over 30 different pathways, and it has no side effects. Mm-hmm. That's a better solution. And so it's just about presenting the science in the way that they can understand it. But what I saw was they would call me then with the patient stories. And so I have so many patient stories where patient no longer has pain. Patient takes this and doesn't have to take the other stuff they were taking for a decade. A lot of patients, they're trying to control the amount of NSAID use because we're not meant to take high doses of it forever. I am now seeing people who come to me who say, yeah, I was a student. I played tennis as an athlete. And I was just popping 8 NSAIDs at a time. My coach said, just use it for pain. And no one ever said later, what could this look like in terms of my GI system and leaky gut and these issues? So I think we're living through a moment where we're still coming to understand as a society what is happening. In the functional medicine area, we're pretty clear on what's true and not true here. But I have seen personally people call me all the time and they say, I was taking turmeric. It wasn't doing anything for me. I was picking it up at the big box retailers. I thought I was taking something good for myself. I took yours. Now I feel it. And I think a lot of what we deal with nowadays as a society is we wake up in the morning and we feel, as we're aging, many of us feel achy, we feel stiff, we don't feel great, we don't have a lot of energy to move and start the day. And that's kind of demotivating for our first workout or movement in the day. And so one big piece of feedback I get is I don't wake up with aches or stiffness anymore. I wake up and I feel fine. I go through the day and it keeps my pain from an 8 down to a 2. That's a big deal to give me that without taking something else. And so I make 2 formulas, turmeric gold and inflammation relief. Turmeric gold is that I call it like the flagship, the classic formula according to the science that follows all that science that's published, the 500 milligrams curcumin, 4 milligrams black pepper extract. And I added turmeric back in for the synergistic effect of it. And I sourced that curcumin at a 98% grade potency. So we're always landing at 97 to 98% and mimicking the proportion of nature when it comes to the curcuminoids. What most people don't know is out of the entire turmeric plant, only 3 to 5% of it is the curcuminoids. And so when you take that one slice out of turmeric and give it to you in a potent form, if you extract it in some cheap way or inexpensive way or unconscious way, the body doesn't know what to do with it because it's foreign. As opposed to if you mimic Mother Nature, the body knows exactly how to take that and use it. Mm-hmm. So Ayurveda is very deliberate. And my inflammation relief formula, I put curcumin, boswellia, dry ginger, amla, black pepper, all in the right proportions to deliver a potent result. So I have thousands of people who've taken that and say, that is my formula. So it just depends on each person. Like we talked about, it's individual.
Right. And you mentioned a key term that we use often, the foreign body response that so a lot of the clients I work with, they're from the implant injured community. They've received hernia mesh implants. Primarily, most of the people, 80% or so, are mesh implant injured. And then there's the other breast implant, there's dental implants. So these are all foreign bodies. The body is in constant attack. We like to talk about pre-toxing and detoxing. And I feel turmeric is one of those things that can fit in both of those boxes as an initial support to get the body to be able to eliminate and to build the nutrition that it needs to heal, or at least to manage the next step of healing, which is like the deep detox. So when we talk about the herbs, specifically, I guess for our audience, again, are there any situations where turmeric or the other anti-inflammatory herbs would not be appropriate?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that because as you mentioned surgical patients, I was like, wait, I have a comment. So when it comes to turmeric, we know that turmeric is a vasodilator. It can gently thin the blood. And so a conversation I have with every physician I work with is pay attention. This is not meant to be taken day of surgery. We have to stop in advance. And so most of my surgeons stop a week before, some go a little closer. But in general, our rule is a week before and a week after. And then it's truly on the comfort level of the surgeon. It's their patient. But yes, we always say pay attention. Blood thinning effects in the body.
Yes, for sure. And for people who have hypertension and are taking medications, would that also be a contraindication?
Yeah, you have to watch out what it'll do because it can thin blood and it can affect how much medication you should be taking.
Right. And working with a practitioner can help you potentially reduce the pharmaceutical intake and approach it more naturally. I know you also mentioned the importance of digestion. So Ayurveda places enormous importance there. Why is gut health so central, especially when we're trying to heal from chronic illness?
For sure. So Ayurveda taught us that gut health is the center of all health. And that digestive fire inside of us is meant to be built, stoked, managed, honored. It is the center of all of our health. And so it's interesting, in the West, we don't really think about it much. We wake up, we start our day, we eat what we eat. If we get to a restaurant, we accept that glass of ice water. We think nothing about a fire within us. But over in the Eastern cultures in Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine, there is actually a big focus on this fire within us. And is it robust? Is it strong? And so Ayurveda's entire system is built around our gut health. We talk about waking up in the morning and hydrating first. We want to have peristalsis. We want to ensure you're going to have a bowel movement every single day and that no one is constipated. Because if you do not have that bowel movement, that's a toxin backup in the system. That means digestive flow is stopped and we're not doing things well. Then our next habit we teach is tongue scraping. Gently scraping the tongue 7 to 14 times in the morning, because we teach that all the organs of the body are reflected on the tongue, just like in reflexology, they're reflected on the bottom of our feet. But I've had people who tell me my mouth feels not the same without it, but it helped with my constipation as well, because doing a tongue scraping ignites the digestive fire for the day. And so you can imagine when we talk about gut health in the modern day sense, we're talking about gut microbiome. We want diversity of that microbiome. We know there's a gut-brain axis. We know our gut is affecting our brain and vice versa. There's a connection there. We know that there's a vagus nerve. Well, Ayurveda said all of this 5,000 years ago and built an entire lifestyle plan for us that honors it, strengthens it, and helps us manage it. So some of the key habits that we recommend are when you eat a meal, sit down, focus on that meal. So your body, your digestive enzymes, as we would call it in modern terms, communicate with your mouth and you have a proper communication around what enzymes to release and how to digest and process this food. A lot of times nowadays we are eating on the go. Like lately, my life is so busy. I almost ate something standing this week, and I was like, really? You don't care to absorb it? Like, that's what we're going to do here? I was like, no, you can't eat the blueberries standing, because the blueberries are supposed to be good for you, and your stomach is not going to know what you sent down the pipe. So Ayurveda talks about real consciousness when it comes to our food. That's one way to improve digestion. Another is all those morning habits. Maybe it's ginger lemon tea to stoke the fire and get it going for the day. We talk about 3 square meals a day, no snacking, no munching. And nowadays we have such an access to food all around us, we could drag meals one into the next. Ayurveda says never drink ice water. If it's a hot day and you want that icy drink, put it far away from your meal, 30 to 45 minutes away. No hydrating during your meals. Allow it to really concentrate on the food and digest that food. Don't dilute that effort. And so all these practices add up to eventually being our habits and being our lifestyle. And once we have that lifestyle in place, then digestive health is easy because we've put these habits in place. It's not a thought or a fight with ourselves. It's just what we do. And so that's what I like to bring forward, is show people how to bring the lifestyle and plant it into your life so it becomes your way of life.
Beautiful, Dr. Shivani. If there's one mindset shift that you wish that every chronically ill person could make, what would that be?
I would say live according to your elemental design and apply it to your circadian rhythm, because we are all different. It's easy to teach circadian rhythm as we should all be the same, but once you understand what elemental type you are, you can really navigate life differently with a deeper self-knowledge and self-understanding, and even a self-forgiveness. A lot of times when we are that chronic ill patient, we always think, gosh, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong as a kid? What did I do wrong in between? It must be me. No one's listening to me. But what Ayurveda teaches us is you have such sovereignty in your health, and it comes through a self-understanding. And then once you understand that elemental design, you can start to design your entire life around it, and then start to see those shifts in your health that you've been hoping to see.
Beautifully said. All of the topics that you brought up today, I feel like they need a lot more time. I wish I had an episode for each topic that you've addressed. But with the resources that you have available, can you share with our audience where they can learn a little bit more about the turmeric blend that you've created, and also about the Ayurvedic medicine that you practice?
For sure. So my book that's coming out is called The Inflammation Code. It's on my website, shivanigupta.com. My podcast is called The Inflammation Code as well. So my website is shivanigupta.com. I'm at dr.shivanigupta on Instagram and all the socials. My supplement company that's Ayurvedic is Fusionary Formulas, fusing East and West, so Fusionary, formulas.com. And I made a special code for your audience. Enlightened is going to give them 15% off.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Dr. Shivani, thank you again for joining us today, for sharing so much practical wisdom and information about gut health, about the Ayurvedic principles that so many of us are kind of naive to, for lack of a better term. And so this episode, I know, has helped so many people. We love getting to speak with practitioners and experts and people who are very research focused, as you are. So I appreciate all the wealth of information. I'm looking forward to reading your book.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and I can't wait for you to read it.
Awesome. So for you, my audience, if you've liked the episode, please remember to subscribe and share it with someone who needs it. All of Dr. Shivani's links are going to be shared in our show notes, and as well as our newsletter. So until next time, take care of your body and keep moving forward one step at a time. Take care.